welcome back to the NoScore Review Show, where we have in-depth critique and nuanced discussion of some of the latest movies, television, and video games. I'm your host, Nick Green, and today is a special episode. Once again, we are doing our year in review. This will be the third year in review now in a row, and it'll be a little bit more stripped back than past ones I've had, just with the number of reviews I've done over the year and the amount of guests I've had, or lack thereof, really. It's been a more minimalistic year, but I still wanted to look back and chat with some of the past guests I've had on before. And of course, I think mostly because taking the number one spot and also just proximity, joining me is Matt Schmidt. Thank
I
you
sure
for
am.
joining me. You're going to be helping me kind of run the show today. There's only going to be a few other, if you haven't seen the year in review before, pre-recorded segments where I throw to other guests to kind of highlight their picks for the year, be that movie, video game, or like television series that they really loved and wanted to talk about. But for now, we're going to go over our general thoughts for the year, and then Matt will get into your pick, and then maybe we'll do some throwing to segments, and then I can do my pick, and we'll wrap things up from there. So, general thoughts, Matt. How do you feel coming out of 2024?
Overall, I thought it was a pretty damn good year. I didn't see as many movies maybe as I usually do,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the movies that I chose to see, I really enjoyed more often than not. I think I was, not to get into scores too much because this is the No Score Review Show, but I think my Letterboxd curve really shows that it was a lot of 3.5 to 5 star movies that were being watched this year, and very little below that. And some of my favorite movies of the decade so far have been from this year, including the one that I will be talking about later on.
Perfect.
So I was pretty pleased. It maybe wasn't as strong overall as something like 2019, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
which saw like Parasite, Marriage Story, The Lighthouse,
Mm-hmm.
all those, Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's a pretty good year. Yeah, what
Yeah,
did
I
you
think.
think?
Well, I think I would agree by and large. I think if we can kind of relate it to, because you mentioned like 2019, um, we're finally, I think, getting back into a pre-pandemic groove. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
slowly kind of getting back to normal, so to speak, both in kind of quality of films and regular releases. We did have the strikes last year, so that will have put a halt on some things.
I feel like that'll be
But
more of a next year problem almost.
yeah, that's true. Um, but yeah, overall, I think it was really good. I think I might have mentioned it in one of my pre-recorded segments. But I think like looking back, I think it was a really strong year for television. I think there was quite a few seasons of television and like new shows that were really good, did really well. And then movies, there was like a ton to appreciate. Um, and yeah, video game wise, it was a little bit less. I was a little less involved this year, but still kind of kept my finger on the pulse of that whole uh, separate entertainment like bubble. And there were still like quite a few good hitters throughout the year as well. Yeah, I don't really have any complaints. I was like pleasantly surprised with how much I was able to kind of regain my footing, I guess, for lack of a better term, just with how like in terms of personal life stuff went, how much of a uh, shakeup of a year last year was on the personal side. Um,
Indeed.
so yeah, I think it was a pretty good year overall. No real complaints. I think also, and maybe it's just like an in the moment thing more so than anything. But like, I mean, I can bring up the list, but just thinking like having it be a very good year, but also not thinking of, and maybe this kind of speaks to your point, not having a ton of like big, like benchmark movies or like highlight movies that like when you think of 2024 it's like, oh yeah, it was the year this came out, you know. There's like a couple things here and there, but especially like kind of you said, comparatively to other years, I don't think it quite maybe reached that
And I think a lot
mark.
of the movies that do fall into that, like, year of this movie, it's none of the big studio movies, aside from maybe one that I
Yeah.
can think of.
Yeah.
But it's mostly like it was a big year for indies and for
Hmm.
foreign film, I think.
Well, and honestly, uh I think quite a few like mid-budget films it felt like as well, where or maybe we're just if nothing else kind of seeing a start to a return to that kind
Yeah.
of mid-budget level.
People are realizing that dumping $500 million into one movie is making it very difficult to get your returns.
Exactly, yeah.
And
Who
we're
would have thought?
seeing with certain films that you can use not a lot of money to make a very good looking movie,
Yep.
specifically when it comes to VFX, specifically when it comes to destruction and big scaly monsters. I think everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep. um so yeah, overall a good year. And yeah, pretty happy with how I ended the year with having seen what I wanted to see and everything. I think looking back kind of at the list of things I wanted to see and things I did end up seeing, like I don't think I really missed much that I want to
Yeah.
still seek out, which is nice. Um, yeah. With that, I think we're going to go into the favorites, but I think we'll start with one of our pre recorded segments. So I'm going to throw to alternate reality me, and then we'll be back after one or two of those segments. Take it away, me. Thank you so much, Nick, for that lovely segue. Today, I have with me the Out of Focus boys, Michael and Scott. Welcome back to the No Score Review Show, fellas. Thank you for joining me for this year in review. So we're going to go over each of your picks. I decided to pair you up because it just is chaotic chemistry when we all get together, and I can't get enough of that. So, yeah, we'll just start off with our general thoughts for the year of our Lord 2024, and then we'll kind of get into our highlights of the year. Scott, do you want to kick things off?
Sure. I mean, 2024 was a banner year for remakes and
Yeah,
remasters. So if you liked old games and you like a good paint a cone on them, this was kind of that year. So
yeah,
that's definitely what I explored a lot. Especially over on the Square Enix side. I mean, we got a good sampling with FF7 Rebirth.
oh,
So
yep,
that was
yep. That was
really
right at the beginning of the year.
tasty. Yeah. But then later on, there was the treats of some Dragon Quest 3, and then
Yeah,
my probably
it was
pick for
two
the
and three, wasn't it?
just 3. 1 and
Oh,
2
okay.
are going to be coming out at a later time. That
Oh,
they're
okay.
in the HD 2D ports.
Gotcha.
But I think my pick for the year is actually maybe a bit of an outlier called Romancing Saga 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
But also an RPG.
also very very much
Because
a
it was kind of a
JRPG.
banner year for RPGs as well, from what I gleaned from the year.
Yeah,
Lots
so
of good RPGs, not just like lots of RPGs. Like it was also a year of quality as well.
yeah, so definitely that. Kind of like across the board there as well. I mean, if you're on, good old PC or any of the consoles, there definitely was a good pick of stuff for you. So,
Hmm.
and definitely for PC, like a good amount of ports of stuff as well, so that PC people weren't just hung out to dry with just indies and stuff.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah. Well, since you will likely be my resident video game pick for the year, and since I don't know how much Michael knows about Romancing Saga, but I know next to nothing about it. So you want to give a little breakdown of what that's all about? You
I
said it was
mean,
the second one, right?
the second one, yeah. So Romancing Saga is one of those interesting spin-off series. The very first entry is actually called Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy.
Hmm.
But it spun off into its own whole series of called
Interesting.
just the Romancing Saga. Number two was originally on the Super Nintendo way back in the early 90s.
Hmm.
And this was like a really good like remake of it. Which I loved about it. Just a whole bunch of awesome systems working together, some good turn-based combat to it. You get to kind of like develop out your own little kingdom with it. And it's also like a time skipping game where like you play the chunk of a game and then like it fast forwards like a good 100 to 200 years.
Oh wow.
And you
Okay.
kind of see your choices echo throughout your kind of play as you go through. Um, it's interesting because like you still do like all the same side quests. It's just like, okay, you just now do this side quest like 400 years later. So
That is a
so,
long quest.
yeah, like the people still really need your help with this one side quest, and they're willing to
Couldn't get
wait
it done on their
1,000
own in
years.
400 years.
No. um but I found it just to be like a good solid play. I think the reason why I kind of picked it over Final Fantasy Rebirth
Hmm.
is that with Rebirth in like the later half, you are kind of just grinding some of the same stuff. Like you're kind of doing
Okay.
just the same area exploration stuff that you did in like the previous 4 areas. You kind of just really start rushing the story instead. It's just like, even though it is kind of like the same story from 20 years ago. Whereas I found with Romancing Saga, it was kind of like a nice breath of fresh air. You're always doing something new. You're always exploring new areas.
A Breath of the Wild, even.
Yeah.
No tears were shed in that kingdom.
No.
Devils will not cry.
And Knuckles.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Well,
But yeah, no, I guess, to continue the trend, I'm picking, sort of like that B tier JRPG. So, yeah.
well, clearly it was your S tier for the year.
Yeah.
So, what it being a sequel, did it do a lot of improving on the first game at all?
I mean, it's one of those franchises where it's just like the setting, narrative, and all of that is separate from like its previous entry.
Oh, okay. Very much in the vein of Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you're kind of just looking at similar mechanics being carried over.
Mm-hmm.
Which with these kind of Saga games, the one thing that's neat with it is it difficulty scales with your own progression. So like as your guys get tougher, enemies get tougher. So it's never just like, oh, I can just go back to whatever area and like just farm dudes and get strong.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just like, no, you still got to employ a bit of your strategy,
Which would
to
also
it.
keep the old areas fresh, probably.
Yes, absolutely. So like as you're needing to grind out stuff, it gets a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's awesome. Michael, how about you? What were your thoughts on the year of our Lord, 2024?
Oh, it's been a great year. It's been a great year for movies, Nick. I'm out here. I'm at Hollywood. Everyone here is talk of the town. We got Joker 2, I Gotta Poo, Madam Web just came out swinging. We got The Crow, which died like the actor did.
The Borderlands movie.
Borderlands.
Does
just
anyone
like
remember that?
nobody wants to. Argyle, that was this year. Don't think it was 5 years ago. That was this year.
The Beekeeper. That was at the
Um,
beginning of the year as well.
And let's not forget the big old megalopolis.
Oh
Go
yeah.
back to the club. It's been this weird year for movies, I would say, as an overall perspective, because in some ways, there has been a trend of audiences going back to movie theaters, like a trend in like a bit away from streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like people really want to go there, but it feels sucky because audiences get punished with shit like this. Like they put trust in it. Then again, I would say that Madam Web was the funniest movie of the year. I mean that legitimately. It is. I watched it in full. it is excessively hilarious. But
It's
I'm
also
also,
glad
pretty
you were able to get some
educational.
humor out of it, because I just found no enjoyment
how
at
could you
all.
not? She goes to the Amazon, meets a shaman who introduces her to the quote unquote spider men of the Amazon. And then later, in a big fight, the same shaman, he shows up in a vision and he's there behind her and he just goes, use the web. And then she uses the web on him and they win. And she gets paralyzed from almost drowning somehow. It's the perfect movie.
Thank goodness that CPR training they did throughout the movie really helped her out.
No,
Oh
that's why
yeah.
they had a 5-minute no soundtrack CPR segment where each girl took turns learning how to
Well, and
CPR.
they could clip that from the movie and just use that as proper medical training. It's
I
great.
think
It's a
no,
dual
that wouldn't be
purpose
good
movie.
because then like all the doctors would kill themselves. But like maybe segments of it.
Right, sure.
Um, but
Okay.
overall, I would say that there was some positive for the movie world in 2024, and that's in the world of horror. Like horror keeps building a lot of momentum.
Mhm.
Like we had like Terrifier 3 is not really like my cup of tea, but like really, really R-rated movie got a really big return at the box office.
Yeah.
Alien Romulus was a big fan favorite.
Mhm. Long
Long
Legs.
Legs. Um, Another Quiet Place movie for some reason. Good for you, John Krasinski. I don't get it, but like if other people have a good time. Smile 2. Like honestly, the first like the thing is like I watched the first Smile movie with friends this year,
Mhm.
and for the longest time I thought it was in the same vein. Oh, he's doing the smile from the Smile 2.
I did watch it as well, so
Well,
yeah.
the thing is, like, it was. And I should also mention this. So, I watched the Smile movie with friends because we thought that it was in the same vein as a Truth or Dare movie, like cheesy, big smile. It's
Yep.
actually a lot about depression and overcoming generational trauma.
Mhm.
I then, as a goof, wanted to watch Truth or Dare with the same friends. And about 14 minutes in, I was like, no, this isn't the Truth or Dare movie I was looking for. And then through some further research, we found out that there is Truth or Dare 2017, a low budget sci fi movie, and also Truth or Dare, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare 2018. So it's like,
Only a
we learned
year
a lot
apart
this year.
too, which is
Yeah, only,
interesting.
but they had to call it Blumhouse's Truth or Dare because they're already taken. Already
Huh.
taken. And yeah, there was Heretic, which is one I still want to watch, and Nosferatu. Like really, really big year for horror, and it continues to be like every year is another huge year for horror, which is really great because it continues to be an underrepresented genre come award season. And so I like the fact that audiences are kind of just being like, kind of fuck the Oscars. They're like horror is pretty untouched in terms
Mhm.
of don't let the Oscars here. Scott's like,
Cut it out. Just cut it out.
Mr. Oscar will come right to your house.
Mr. Oscar. His first name isn't Oscar. It's last.
No, his first name's Isaac.
Oh no. The evil Oscar Isaac Oscar.
His evil twin.
But yeah, it continues to be a good show that audiences don't care about awards and that stuff that's pretty untouched by studios, which like, okay, here's your micro budget, go make a movie, whatever. And then they
Mhm.
do, it's a good movie because studios don't touch it, is like it's really fun to see. But on the other side of things, for my favorite of this year, it's gonna have to be The Wild Robot.
And rightly
Which
so.
was like, this might be a little bit contentious. It does not really break the boundaries of animation. The animation, to be clear, is good. There isn't really any scenes where I was like, oh, they broke ground here or there. But they had really talented people who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I think the score for it carried a lot of it.
Mhm.
The pacing of it was actually pretty fast paced for an animated movie because to give away segments of the plot here, but we're at the end of the year, you had your chance to watch The Wild Robot. I told everyone, okay, you had your chance.
You had your chance.
The segment where the baby duck hatches, or is it goose?
It's a duck.
The
little
gosling.
duck humor for you. A little duck humor for you. Where the duck hatches, I thought, okay, so the rest of the movie is going to be about the robot mom and the duck and they raise each other, and that's only just like that's 20 minutes, but it's a 20 minutes so well spent that you become endeared to them
Hmm.
immediately. Like they do it, like they do this amazing bit where you get everything you need about the characters. The duckling gets ostracized for, even though he's not an ostrich, he gets ostracized for not fitting in, and he's doing like lots of robot noises because his mom's a robot and that's what he understands. And they get the bullying thing done. You think, okay, it's going to be a long, big plot about he's bullied, and then he gets the girl because he's special, different. No, you get that segment, move on. It's a very efficient movie. It doesn't
Hmm.
hold your hand and wait for you to catch up. It's like, we're going, pay attention, we're going here, come on.
Hmm.
And it was overall just like a really fun, moving story about like motherhood and all that stuff, and just funny, just really, really funny.
Very funny. Yeah. Some really cool segments too. That whole
Mhm.
flying montage was awesome. And I loved
Mhm.
that like song that accompanied it. That was like the one of the biggest surprises of the year for me.
Mhm.
Especially with how, like, we were talking about this before recording. It's like they're marketing certain movies in really strange ways. This even happened with like another animated movie, Transformers One. They're marketing it for like mass audiences and making it seem like this really generic run of the mill kids
Mhm.
movie, which it's not in both cases, in my opinion, for
Mhm.
Transformers and Wild Robot. Um, but like it holds its own against some of the best Pixar movies, I would say. Like, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
easily one of the best DreamWorks movies for sure.
Mhm. I
Um,
mean, after Shrek 4.
After Shrek 4, of course. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with the Wild Robot being a top pick of the year. Um, yeah, like it. I agree with you as well, Michael, on the animation standpoint. It's not really adding any new tools or tricks to the toolbox, but it's
Mhm.
just making excellent use of everything that's already there.
Mhm.
And like you could be reductive and say it's very much in the vein of like Spider Verse animation, blending 2D and 3D, and using like uh, what's the term again? Ones and twos, I think,
Yeah.
for frames. Um, and yeah, it's just absolutely gorgeous, super funny, super
Mhm.
heartwarming. Um,
And
it's in my top 10 for the year.
it's not to say that there isn't any creativity in the animation, because that, as a lot of that
Yeah.
went to the titular wild robot in
Hmm.
making her not only like a presence on screen and very humanoid, but like building that kind of efficiency and transformability into what would have been like a robot that can do anything. So her
Yeah.
arms have like many segmented joints, and she
Hmm.
can curl into a ball, and she can do all these other things. But
Yeah.
she never like warps and stretches so much. She remains solid. The animals are the more the cartoon characters,
Yeah.
but she has a very solid and fit structure to her that
Hmm.
like goes throughout it, and that takes creativity to understand. Like, okay, her hand, like I like that. I also like her hand comes off at lots of points and becomes almost
Hmm.
like its own little
Yeah,
mascot,
it's like yeah,
but they don't like
its own
overplay
arms.
it. They don't like,
Yeah.
now it goes, it's a little minion kind of thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't like go and do a spin off, because that was like kind of my worry when the hand started first doing that thing. Is like, are we gonna get the wild hand spin off series now or something like that?
Well, to touch on like spin-offs and like follow-ups,
Mhm.
I was actually initially, because I was very content with this movie and really happy at like a new kind of IP and like story being told in animation, and not just these countless sequels and
Mhm.
prequels and adaptations and stuff, with how like Pixar seems to be working and Disney in general. Um, but then like learning about sequels being greenlit, like I had some initial like hesitancy and doubts, but then also realizing apparently this is based off a trilogy of books,
Mhm.
and so it's going to be a trilogy of movies, so like there's pre-existing source material for them
Mhm.
to adapt, so that has a little bit more faith coming from me, which is great, and seems to have adapted the source material very well,
Yeah.
from what I've seen from the authors kind of takeaways from the movie, which is
Yeah,
really great.
it'll be interesting to see how they adapt the Wild Robot, the Two Towers, and also the Wild Robot Return of the King. But like, I'm
Yeah,
excited to see what the team has in store.
yeah.
I thought it was gonna be Wild Robot Empire Strikes Back.
No, they canceled that one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the book title. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're adapting Empire Strikes Back into Wild Robot and the Half-Blood Prince. So that'll be the fourth movie. And that's a little bit of book humor for all you bookworms out there. Perfect. Great. Yes. Thank you both so much for joining me on this year in review. Let's throw it back to past Nick, future Nick, whoever I am, different Nick. All right, and we are back with Matt Schmidt.
Still here.
And still here. So now we'll go over your segment, Matt, your pick of 2024.
My pick. Well, my pick is one that I'm sure a lot of people will probably be sharing with me. The jury at the Cannes Film Festival certainly shares my opinion. My number one by far and large is Anora. It saw it at VIFF this year with a full house. It was, peak middle of the festival, the big like tentpole film, really, that I think most people were really excited for, given the hype.
Yep.
And it just so thoroughly lived up to expectations. I've been a fan of Sean Baker since Florida Project really came out. I was aware of him before, but that was the first film that I saw of his in theaters. And I didn't think that it was going to be possible for him to make something that I would love more, but he did. And it's so big. The performances across the board are so nuanced and real. And the script is so well written, and the improvisation from the cast highlights the great points and expands on them as well. And just the filmmaking, the fact that Sean does so much of the work himself, like he's out there with his partner and like life partner and producing partner. They do the casting together. He does all the editing. He produces and directs and writes, and he's just like a one-man army that is able to make these incredible visions come to life. And it feels like he's finally gotten the budget that he deserves to be able to pull off these grand spectacles, rather than the really close, intimate portraits that he's been doing so far, but still retaining that kind of feel to it. And
he's not getting lost in the scope.
Yeah, no, he's not like all of a sudden, he's got all this money and he doesn't know what to do with it. He knows exactly what he needs to do to pull it off, and the budget only helps him do that. And it's just such a grand epic feeling movie, even though it really takes place over a very short amount of time for most of the movie. Most of the movie is like one day.
Well, and it's also like in terms of spectacle, like it's people driving around, walking around the city, right?
Yeah, but it's just like there's so much in it. Like you've got the first act being like Pretty Woman, which is how Sean sort of describes it, and then you get this 28-minute long real-time home invasion scene that's balancing like a bunch of different characters in different rooms of the house. It's also balancing a phone call with another character that's in a car and another location at the same time, and trying to like make all of this spatial continuity work is just so unreal. And the amount of like planning that it must have taken to get everything right, and then to also have to do stunt coordination in the middle of all of this as well, and be able to time that so that you can cut when you need to cut to the certain things. It's like that at that point in the movie was when I went like, oh, this is going to be good. And then after that, it only gets arguably better. And as you get to know these characters, and then it builds up to this finale that like everybody kind of, you can see coming kind of a mile away. But the strength of Mikey Madison's character to just keep fighting for her bag the whole
Mhm.
time in the face of all these like insurmountable obstacles and all of these forces that are sort of working against her.
Yeah.
The determination there and her performance delivering this character to the screen is just unreal. And I really hope that they get more recognition for it. I think they've gotten some awards at like some of the smaller festivals, but they got like completely snubbed at the Oscar. I mean, not the Oscars, the Golden Globes.
Mhm.
Um, so I hope they get some Oscar nominations. Not that I really give a shit about the Oscars, but just like
Yeah.
the fact that it deserves to be recognized
Yeah.
for its greatness.
Mhm.
Yeah, it knocked my socks off, and I knew right out of the theater, I'm like, this is my favorite movie of the year. And Nosferatu came close, but and Dune 2 also up there.
Mhm.
Those are, I think, the three that I would say are my like perfect movies of the year.
Mhm.
Uh,
What a
maybe
great.
Godzilla. Maybe Godzilla minus one minus color is also up there. I
Yeah.
think that knocked me on my ass in a
Mhm.
totally different way. But yeah, I think by a long shot, it's got to go to Anora, and there's not a single thing that I can complain about with that
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah, I'm very eager to rewatch that movie. Uh, I really had a good time with it as well.
But
Um,
you had a bad audience experience and just a
yeah,
lot of other stuff going on at the time that stopped you from maybe being able to
yeah,
fully sink in.
I think there was some like other variables with that screening, um, like that didn't, like you said, I guess, didn't allow me to really absorb it properly.
Didn't you have a
Um,
headache too or something?
uh, no, it might have been a different one
I
than
mean, who
Biff.
knows?
But
It
yeah,
was a lot of movies
I
bound
still
to have a
really,
headache.
I still had a good time with it overall. Also, one of the funniest movies I've seen this year, I think,
Yeah.
especially like with a crowd.
And it's like it's not like they're trying to be funny. It's you don't have a
No,
bunch of characters that are telling jokes
no, it's
and
very
trying to get
situational
you. Yeah,
comedy.
it's like that's what real comedy should be. It's just funny situations and
Hmm.
characters reacting to what's happening to them
Yeah,
in ways that are funny because of how the personalities clash and just of how like ridiculously convoluted some of the things
yeah.
can become. And
The
yeah, it's just
baptism scene,
oh, that one of my
fantastic.
favorite comedic moments I think ever is
Yeah.
when uh the priest is like checking his phone while they're baptizing that baby, and then
Yeah.
he gets the message and he's like, no, and then he has to like leave the baptism.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
So good.
that whole scene is just gold.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that
Uh,
was during the real time scene as well. Like
yeah.
that was in real time, cutting between the house and then the church and then the car.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I would strongly recommend Anora as well. Even despite like not quite having enjoyed it as much. But
Unless you really hate nudity and sexual themes.
well, I mean, yeah, not one to watch with the family.
Not one to watch with the family, maybe not one to watch with the blinds open either.
Or that, or on an airplane. This is
Or
definitely not an airplane movie.
that would be a power move to watch this on the airplane.
Huge power
That
move.
would be a power move.
Yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. I I agree on pretty much all your points, Matt. Anora was one of the big hits of the year for sure. Cool. Well, with that, let's throw to another segment for another favorite. All right. I'm here with Cole Parkinson, regular guest of the show. Welcome back, Cole.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on to the year in review once again.
You bet.
We're going to chat another video game adaptation TV show, weirdly enough, but
My
honestly,
specialty.
a great sign. Great sign that we're
Yep.
getting to strike gold in this kind of niche vein. Yeah. But before we do that, do you want to give any kind of general thoughts on the year overall in terms of entertainment, games, movies, and television overall?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Games wise, I really haven't played much, but that's just because games are so expensive that I just wait for them to go on sale. So I don't really have any
Yeah.
thoughts on any new games. I wanted Indiana Jones is the big one for me, but I don't have an Xbox. So like
Hmm.
that's going
Hmm.
to be a 2025 game for me. So movies
Right.
and TV, lots of really good stuff. I know you don't really touch on music, but there's been great music. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I
good.
mean, lots of entertaining things for sure. Um, and
Hmm.
honestly, my favorite movie just came out a couple days ago from the year, so that's kind of unusual,
Oh,
but
what? Wait,
yeah,
was it Nosferatu?
it was. Yeah, loved it.
Very cool. It's your favorite,
Yes,
hey?
yeah, and it's my favorite
Nice.
Robert Eggers movie too now. Just slightly above
Wow.
The
Okay.
Lighthouse, but just slightly above it. But again, it's
Right.
it's so fresh that I haven't seen The Lighthouse since it
Hmm.
came out. It just came out on 4K actually, so I'm going to rewatch it here in a couple of days probably. So,
There
um,
you go.
also haven't seen Dune
Cool.
2. Have that on 4K. I'm going to watch that too. So,
Oh yeah, you
maybe
gotta get on that, man.
yeah, I'm just at that point now where it's like if people don't want to see movies, I just go by myself. So like I didn't go see
Good.
Dune,
That's
even
great.
though it was just I love going by myself, man. You're in and out. You just show up right on time. You walk in, sit down,
Totally.
watch a movie, and yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I'm super excited for Dune 2. Loved the first one. I read I don't know the first four books. Uh, they are
Oh, okay.
I like the first two, and then it's brutal after that. I hated the next two, but he's only
Yeah,
doing the first two books, so that's perfect for people who like the first two books like me.
that is perfect. Yeah, I would say as the year overall, it's been like a good consistent year, but it's not like one of those years that has these big standout moments, like maybe
Hmm.
to a certain extent with things like Nosferatu and Dune 2.
Yeah,
But those were pretty few and far between with those like high highs, I guess. Um, but still a pretty good year overall, like even on the video game front, even though like I'm very much the same way as you, like I haven't really dipped my toe much into the gaming sphere this year, but still like lots of good stuff coming out. Indiana Jones,
yeah.
Astrobot,
Oh yeah,
Black Myth
Astrobot.
Wukong, I've heard great things even on the
Yeah,
indie scene, like Belatro's taken over. So yeah, pretty good year. But there is one standout for you in particular.
yeah.
uh let's get right into it.
Well, I'll adjust my screen so people can probably take a guess. But
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
my
yeah.
favorite thing of the year was definitely the Fallout Prime show. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't have super high expectations just because video game adaptations are so hit and miss. I mean, we had The Last of Us
Yeah,
we talked about, but I mean, the blueprint for that show was right there. Like it was basically already a series. Fallout, they already said,
exactly.
we're not adapting any of the games beat for beat, which was the right move because those, like,
Yeah,
how could you adapt a Fallout game in a TV show beat for beat? Like,
yeah,
there's really not a big overarching story in any of those games. I mean, New Vegas kind
yeah.
of, but even then, like, it's not something I would want to sit down and watch for 8 hours. Um,
Hmm.
but what they really, really nailed was just the tone and the feel of Fallout. Like, it felt like I was playing
Hmm.
a Fallout game the entire time.
Yeah,
The story was great. The characters were kind of zany, like in a Fallout way, tons of
yeah.
laughs. My girlfriend has never played a Fallout game. She knows I love Fallout. Like she's sat in the kitchen while I've played games. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of those fucking songs over and over and over again. But honestly, when those songs showed up in the show, like I am just goosebumps and I'm so
Yeah,
excited. Like,
dude,
oh,
smile. Yeah.
right. And it was from the beginning to the end, like, and I don't know how deep we want to get into spoilers, but the ending, like, just how they're going to set up season two, just man, they did such a great job. And just little things like Stimpack, when they use a Stimpack, it uses the same sound. Just
Yeah.
the robots are amazing. Oh man,
Hmm.
just and I want to also shout out just the kind of the scene in LA right at the beginning with Walton Goggins with the bombs going off.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
holy shit! Did they nailed everything, and I really can't believe they did. I know Jonathan Nolan; he did amazing work. Westworld, the first season of Westworld, is one of my favorite seasons of TV ever. So
Hmm.
that was kind of one thing I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. But
Put a little
man, I
bit of
can't.
faith in it.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things where it's like Fallout. Can they do it? Yeah, maybe, but will it feel like Fallout? They did it, man. They did it.
Yeah, they certainly did. Like, because Fallout's one of those properties that doesn't have like the memorable narrative, or that's not what it's known for
Yeah.
necessarily, like you said. And so when it's video games that are a lot more reliant on their kind of art direction or their style over substance or any sort of narrative, it's a lot harder to
Yeah.
translate that to a narrative like adaptation, because like Super Mario, I mean, even the Sonic games to some extent, but like, I don't know what other,
Honestly,
uh,
Borderlands is like that, and they fucked that up with the movie.
Borderlands.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like it's so hit and miss.
Yeah, exactly. And we're still in that hit and miss kind of limbo area because
Yeah.
there's some really good quality stuff coming out now with Last of Us, Fallout, and again, like the Sonic movies honestly are quite good. But then we're still getting stinkers like the Halo show
Yeah.
and Borderlands. So, and I mean like
And if
the Mario movie is like kind of a weird in between because like it's good, but it's also like not. It's a very safe movie. It's like okay and very targeted towards kids, which I mean it is Mario, so fair enough. But
yeah.
we're still in that kind of weird gray area. It's not a consistent thing where like okay, this video game thing is going to have a lot of care put behind it, and I think that is like the biggest thing with the Fallout show
Yeah.
is you can tell like even though they were like very front facing about like we're not adapting any of the games, we're not like doing direct inspiration, they
Yeah.
still had a ton of care for the source material, which is I think the
Hmm.
biggest, like the most important thing in any adaptation of anything.
Yeah.
Like you have to have a reverence for the source material, I feel like otherwise it's not really an adaptation, it's more like just a riff on whatever
Yeah.
you're adapting, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
no, I completely agree. Like the music was there, the sound
Yeah.
design was there, the set design and costumes were great.
The
Like
vaults were
the power
amazing.
armor looked amazing. The
Power
vaults were
armor. Yeah.
so good. Um yeah, it fired on all cylinders. I have almost no complaints other than
No.
I guess I have to wait until season 2 for more.
Which they're already
So,
filming. I've seen some set photos, and I'm like so excited to see what happens. Like I know Jonathan Nolan said, like I think it was at the Game Awards where he said, you know, New Vegas fans, something along with thanks for not burning my house down or something because you're going to be really happy with what happens in season two. Which I mean, we'll
okay.
see. Like I cannot wait. I know, yeah, music again. I kind of touched on that, but when she's in the classroom and like the follow song, the theme kind of comes on, like
Oh,
it's so good.
yeah.
Seeing, you know, the NCR
Yeah.
flag for the first time, just everything. I mean, New
Mhm.
Vegas is like one of my favorite games of all time. It's in my top three. So just kind of being in that world, we're never probably going to get a New Vegas sequel that people want. This kind of is that,
Which
in
is
my opinion.
crazy to me.
Yeah, right. But I think this is kind of going to be it. We'll see what happens in season two. I mean, obviously the big tease at the end, we're kind of heading there. So, yeah, I
Mhm.
cannot wait. Again, they're teasing more creatures too, like death claws. Like there's the skull at the very end. There's a tease
Super
of
mutants.
super mutants tease there, and I think it was it's episode two. I don't know. Can't remember exact what episode. It was one of the very first ones. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, rat scorpions. Like there's so much more things they can do, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Well, and it's such a uh like diverse world with
Yeah.
and like a very rich world as well. So there's tons of stuff to pull from,
Oh yeah.
that they could bring in. Like we haven't even scratched the surface of the Brotherhood of Steel alone, let alone like stuff with Enclave too, right? Like
Yeah.
that could be its own show, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so much material to draw from that like we if there is a longevity to this series running, then Fallout fans will be eating good for a long time as long as the
Yeah.
care is put there.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think they're
I
slowing down anytime soon. It sounds like they're just gonna keep it going. Like there's no game coming anytime soon. Like we're
well,
probably
I was just going to
10 to
say
15 years away from a new Fallout game unless they give it to somebody else. So they got to
yeah.
make the money somehow.
I I do wonder what the landscape of video game adaptations and video game development are going to be going forward, like how they kind
Mhm.
of relate to each other. Because if these big AAA games like Fallout and Elder Scrolls and like GTA are taking such long times to develop,
Yeah.
then the like publishers might want to try and fast forward kind of or fast track other projects in the adaptation space for TV and movies,
Yeah.
to kind of keep fans satiated while these long
Mhm.
development cycles are continuing. Um, because then, I mean, like as on my end anyway, as a fan, like that would keep me tided over, I would think, until the next game came out or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So be
Even The
very
Last of
interesting to
Us,
see
right?
how that. Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
we're
Um,
probably 10 years away from the next one, and I know they're splitting, the second game into 2 or 3 seasons, so they got some time, but really that
mhm,
time's going to be eaten up so quick.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I completely agree with you. It was honestly like kind of touching back on our general thoughts for the year. Also like a really good year for TV in particular.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that may be one of the stronger points of the year was the TV. It was a very high quality bar across the road. Like there were some stinkers along the way, like Acolyte. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, House of the Dragon season 2 is pretty divisive and stuff, but like really high highs follow two video game adaptation seasons this year with Fallout
Yeah.
and Arcane. Arcane
Yeah.
was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just really happy with how that show turned out. I'm also very excited for season 2.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a good time. Definitely strong recommend. Yeah,
Yep.
thanks for joining
100%.
me for the year in review,
You bet.
Cole.
Anytime.
Where can the people find you?
Instagram, Cole Parkinson 4, and Twitter, Cole Parkinson 4. I keep it nice and easy.
Perfect. Awesome. And then I guess we already kind of preemptively went over maybe an honorable mention, but did you have anything else you wanted to give a quick shout out to for the
Um,
year?
Not off the top of my head. No,
Or just sing
Nosferatu
more
was,
praises for Nosferatu?
yeah, amazing. I'm not a huge horror guy, but Robert Eggers just
Yeah.
kind of speaks to me. He's kind of weird. It's very thematic,
Hmm.
very very dark. I
Hmm.
watched all of his movies again before, other than The Lighthouse, because it didn't get here in time. But
Yeah.
just an amazing director. All of his movies bring something new to the table, I feel.
Yeah.
Nosferatu obviously is a remake, so maybe if you've seen all of those other ones, they might not speak to you as much as it did to me. But I was kind of going in pretty blind. Obviously knew the general story, but didn't go back and watch any
Hmm.
of the old ones. So yeah, just creepy as shit. Production design great, costuming great. Bill Skarsgård is a maniac, and I can't wait to see what he does next. He says he wants to do the Joker, and I'm just like, sign me up. If the
That,
DCU wants
yeah.
to do a Joker again, that is your man.
Yep. Totally. I could totally see that.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that was a great movie. That got in my top 3 for sure for the year. Um, it's not my favorite Eggers, but it's like like he has such a consistent track record,
yeah,
and I think like some people or general audiences are more divisive with his work, but I love everything he's done.
same.
So yeah, that's a great shout out.
Yeah,
Thank you once again for joining
you
me,
bet.
Cole, and we'll throw it back to other Nick. Thank you very much, Nick, for that lovely segue. I'm getting the hang of these, I think. I should be by now, I would think.
I would too.
And now it'll be my turn, I think. I'm finally gonna kind of. I haven't actually, because I never did a review for it. My like Letterboxd review was pretty short. I don't have like a ton of thoughts on this movie, but it just hit, and it really is kind of a very subjective, biased perspective for this film, considering the year that I've had. But my favorite of the year is We Live in Time. I was already like really looking forward to it just on the basis of Garfield and Pew as the leads. Um, those two actors are like some of the greatest like working actors today, and to pair them up is just like makes total sense. Um, and yeah, so I was like really looking forward to that, and I was just a mess in the theater by the end of it. It's I think like there's it's not super like highly regarded or anything, and it's probably like it's relatively above average in terms of like rom-coms and dramas, family dramas. But I think it just particularly hit me hard when I saw it, and it still feels I think like as maybe average as the script maybe is. I think Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield really like run with the kind of pretty generic synopsis of the whole film. Um, and their chemistry is just so good that you buy into it from the first scene. And yeah, I was just entranced by it. Like it was just such felt like such a real story. And yeah, I needed it, I guess, at the point I was. So yeah, I don't really have any big notes about it. I like it does an interesting kind of framing device playing with time, doing things out of order, and not kind of sticking to just a conventional um like structure for the narrative, I would say. And I think that particularly really spoke to me just with it goes through uh, various like highs and lows that these two people go through together as a couple and as people, and like they get their own like trials and tribulations to fight through both as a couple and on their own in their like professional lives. um, and yeah, I can't really recommend it enough more. I just think it's like one of my favorite probably romance, because it's not really a rom-com, it's just more like a romance
Yeah, I was gonna
drama.
say, is there really much of a calm element?
Not
It seems a lot more like
particularly.
a feel bad kind of a movie.
Yeah, I don't know, feels sad, I would say, for sure. It's more of a feel sad movie, but it just feels very authentic, and the performances are like obviously the standout. Um, so yeah, if you are wanting something in that vein, uh, it certainly hit that nerve for me. So, um, but like you, Matt, Dune Part Two and Nosferatu were also in my top three. So like as a kind of a honorable mentions section, those two movies. I mean, Part Two, uh, Dune Part Two, like just as if not
Yeah.
better than the first one. Like
I
it's
mean,
just such a
it's like
perfect
a
example.
it's like a Lord of the Rings type situation, really. I see it as it's one movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's so unbelievably consistent.
Hmm.
And I think there are certain aspects that you could look at with the story of it being like too actiony, blah blah blah, because essentially that's the whole second half of one movie. Like the first movie spends a lot of time doing the exposition and all of the mystery and intrigue and everything,
Yeah.
and Dune 2 is the payoff
Hmm.
for that first movie.
Yeah.
So it does beat you over the head with action and stuff a little bit, but like that's kind of what you're paying for. That's kind of
Yeah.
what you're
Well, and
supposed to be
it's not
getting.
like some blockbusters where it's they are also just action, but it's just like mindless action that doesn't really have a lot of weight behind it. Um,
Hmm.
but some like the most impressive thing for me is just how it's like the one of the best examples of just everything coming together in the filmmaking side. And you've got like well executed, like CGI and special effects, practical melding all perfectly together. You've got an
So
amazing
true.
ensemble cast. Everyone kind of gets their moment to shine. Stunning location, stunning photography, the music, sound. It's all of it.
Mm,
It is all of it.
gorgios.
So, and then yeah, Nosferatu was fantastic as well. It met my expectations. It was my most anticipated movie of the year.
It was up there for me.
So I was like very content with what I got. I don't know if I would say it exceeded my expectations at all, really, but
Yeah,
it
I'd say
perfectly
it
met
met
it.
mine.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the few years where my top three anticipated movies are also my top three favorite movies
Ooh.
of the year.
Yeah, that would be a rare
Um,
thing, probably.
yeah, it just so happened that all three of those really hit, and also Godzilla. Like the trailer for that was just immediately like had me locked in, and I was like, this is going to be sick, I can't wait for this, and then saw that and it was great. And honestly, same with The Brutalist. Like we just saw that
Yeah.
like a
Days
couple
ago,
days
as
ago,
of this recording.
and I tend to think of things in terms of like when I saw something in theaters. So for me, I will be counting The Brutalist and A
Oh,
Complete
weird.
Unknown as a 2025 thing.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, just because it allows me to sort of draw the line uh,
Yeah, that makes
in
sense.
a
Well,
more
and like,
specific
especially
way.
if you follow things like Letterboxd, like there was almost probably 10 movies I saw this year in theaters that were like released in theaters that are dated as like the year before or whatever. So it's
Exactly.
like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah, with like all the festivals and everything, like there's stuff that played at VIF that still isn't out in theaters yet.
Yeah.
So just because I saw them this year, a lot of other people are going to be counting it towards their next year
Yeah.
thing anyway. So
Hmm.
so yeah, I'm counting those two movies as 2025. But if we're going like, a lot of people are going to be counting those also as
Hmm.
2024. So I will say The Brutalist also very anticipated, and it also lived up to the hype.
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. Like it just felt like one of those kind of classic Hollywood movies in a sense where it's like grand. It's maybe similar to how you feel about Anora, Matt, how I felt about Brutalist, like this grand scope to it, but it's this small story,
Yeah,
you know? Um, and just absolutely beautiful film, visually, like literally. Still like chewing on the second half personally.
I mean, there's a lot
Uh,
to chew on. That's for damn
so
sure.
yeah, yeah,
It's
but
not the most straightforward, and boy, does it end abruptly. Uh,
yeah.
so you really got to be like, oh, that's,
Oh,
and then you kind of got to like backtrack a little bit, and
yeah, yeah,
and then figure out what the story actually was that they were telling.
yeah.
I think the epilogue clears it up, but it's going to be one of those movies that I think is obsessively rewatched by me and a lot of other people and
Hmm.
dissected for a long time, because it's just like you got 3.5 hours of
Feels like a
film
very
here.
rich movie.
It's incredibly rich, and I think Brady Corbet was referring to, or like comparing himself to Kubrick in a lot of his interviews in a certain way, and it even comes down to like, you got an intermission, starting the movie with an overture. That's
Hmm.
very. I mean, a lot of other movies of the time period that this is sort of evoking used to do that, like Lawrence of Arabia, same thing. You got intermission and overture, and it's like a 4 hour long movie. But I think the comparisons are quite warranted, and it is really like one of those kind of meticulous and clinical,
Yeah,
uh, like big productions. And
hmm,
yeah, it's just knocked my socks off.
agreed. And I think that's probably where we'll wrap it up for the year in review of 2024. Got another year down, and another year ahead of us for stuff to look forward to. Um, if you want to look back on some of the it's a very small selection of reviews for this year that I have on the channel, but I will have a playlist for all the films and television shows I reviewed this year. I think like the ratio is like there's a third of the total videos are Dune related, just because I did part one and then I did
Yeah.
a spoiler free and then a spoiler full review. So
And soon it'll be Messiah,
yep,
because allegedly it's coming out next Christmas, which,
allegedly.
sure.
We'll see about that one.
We will.
Cool. Yeah. Matt, do you wanna shout out like any quick, just by title alone, any quick honorable mentions at all? And then you
I'll
can do your
do a
plugs.
little thing here. So I'll say favorite TV show of the year.
Perfect.
Dark Horse, but it's Shoresy season 3. That is my favorite by far. Well, actually not by far, because The Bear and House of the Dragon were also really good too. But Shoresy is just like, Letterkenny for a long time has been like the best thing that Canada has had to really offer in television, and I think Shoresy is continuing that legacy. And I think it's also the best, maybe one of the best, if not the best, pieces of hockey fiction that is out there. And it's just utterly hilarious. And then I'll also say game of the year, Balatro.
Hell yeah.
Balatro. I'd say, sort of honorable mention for that is Baldur's Gate 3, even though it's a 2023 game, but I only started playing it this year. And I put in like 250 hours into that thing. And then I'll say my musical album of the year is Prelude to Ecstasy by The Last Dinner Party. And also one of my favorite concerts of the year as well.
Nice.
Yeah, and that is my pillar of 3 non-movies.
Cool. Perfect. Yeah. And then where can people find you?
People can find me on Letterboxd, Wisdom Nugget on there, or just search my name. And on there you can find a link to my Instagram as well.
Perfect.
And yeah, that's it. I ain't on Twitter. I'm not going to call
You're
it
not on
X.
Blue Sky or Threads?
I'm not on Blue Sky. I'm not on whatever that new Chinese app is.
Yeah.
Not on TikTok either. Everything is condensed to Instagram, because I can only handle one social media.
And I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Just seeing car crashes and horrible work safe fails.
Yeah, maybe
daily.
Honestly, maybe you shouldn't have Instagram anymore.
I probably shouldn't.
Algorithm is.
It's either cat or like boomers that don't understand how to use CapCut. And like stuff that should be on Live Leak. We're still,
yeah,
that's like my whole feed.
Yeah. Cool. With that,
I'll what
do
about
some
you?
Honorable mentions as well. I also just want to give a shout out to The Wild Robot. I think that was my favorite animated movie of the year. I do love me some animation, so I always want
and
to
shout out to Flo. As
Flo
well,
was also
in
very
respect
good.
to the animated movies.
Yeah, for sure. I think Wild Robot just like blew me away with how little I was expecting from an Illumination or a DreamWorks studio movie, and the quality we got is just so good. And then TV
you could say
show.
It's Shrek-excellent. God. Throwback. You remember Shrek?
Sorry, what? What are you talking about? And then my game, like I said, I didn't really play a ton. But something that's like relatively new. No, I won't say Minecraft. Something's relatively new, and I'll also go a card game. Something called Wild Frost, which is like a roguelike deck builder game. It's got a really like cutesy, satisfying art style, great animation, and just really fun game loop.
Indeed. I've seen him play it.
That.
And it is what he says.
It is all those things.
Believe it.
Did I say TV show? What did I say?
No.
I can't even remember. I
What?
would
It's
say,
Arcane, probably, right?
oh yeah, yeah, Arcane. Invincible season 2 is close, but
Did that come out
I
this
mean,
year? That
it
always
did. Yeah. Well,
it
it
feels
ended
ages
this
ago.
year. It started, I think, the year before. They did like a big break.
Ah,
No, Arcane season 2 for sure. Uh, that give that animation studio everything. Like seriously, I'm not joking. It's insane the level of craftsmanship that they are able to put out. Um, there was like articles and like talk surrounding the insane budget of that show. Double it and let them work as long as like they need, because it's
mhm.
completely worth it. You see it all on the screen. It's amazing. I
I would
can't.
love to see that studio get a short in the next season of Love, Death, Robots.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
And just have them
Honestly,
like go outside of the League of Legends world for a little bit, but
yeah.
still with that style, and then just something completely different.
Yeah.
I'd
Well,
love to see that.
I mean, so if Secret Level gets a second season, which I hope it does, despite the
Hmm.
kind of lack of quality in the first season, um, I mean, more
I
video
mean,
game
also
stuff.
Love, Death, Robots first season was fine. I think it really found its footing with season 2 and especially 3. Like it's only
Yeah,
gotten better. It's just showing that there's an appetite for this thing, because since it's an
totally.
anthology, like the quality is going to be varied every
Yeah,
time. So
for
just
sure.
like give them more money, and
Yeah,
it'll be better.
yeah. No, I am a devoted fan for life now to that studio. Like anything they do, I will check out. I actually still want to check out because they're still doing like promotional trailers for League. So um but yeah, that was the best show I watched this year. Um and yeah, I don't think I have like an album or anything. Nothing that I can draw from the top of my mind anyway. But I will I guess I'll just shout out King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, because that was the year that Matt got me into them, and
Fair. I
they're
mean, you got
fantastic.
Flight Beef 741.
That's true.
That's
Yeah, I
from
actually, yeah,
2024.
yeah, I would strongly recommend that.
Some good old hee haw, hogs and rats and
Yeah,
Antarctica.
yeah. What is it? Tunnel Vision. Um,
Field of Vision.
Field of Vision. That's right.
Tunnel Vision is a Magdalena Bay song. Also a great album.
So yeah, that is where we'll leave it for this episode of the No Score Review Show. Thank you all for joining me this episode. Thank you, Matt, for joining me for this year in review again. And thank you all for putting up with the lackluster year. I'm hoping to kind of ramp things up again and get back to full strength at some point. I really love doing this. It's just a matter of like finding the time and energy for it. So yeah, I really hope for a stellar 2025. I might try and get a top 10 things I'm excited for this year video out as well, because I really enjoyed doing that for this year as well, or last year rather. And yeah, otherwise, you can stay tuned wherever you're listening to or watching this episode of the No Score Review Show. And you can find me on all the socials at No Score or at No Score Reviews. And until
Including
next
Feet
time,
Finder?
including Feet Finder. We'll see you in the next review. Bye bye.